Be me. Gianna, 47, hosting Christmas dinner for my extended family. Spent weeks planning every detail to perfection. Made sure to use only ethically sourced ingredients from women-owned businesses. Even the napkins are from a cooperative that empowers disadvantaged mothers. Feeling proud about creating a gathering that aligns with my values. Family starts arriving around 3 p.m. My father-in-law Marcus shuffles in first, followed by my husband David. Then my brothers-in-law Robert and James with their kids. My eldest son, Thomas, 24, walks in last. Notice he looks unusually serious, but whatever. He's always been moody. As everyone settles around the dining table, I start my traditional pre-meal speech. Before we eat, I'd like to acknowledge that this meal represents the invisible labor that women like me perform every year. While men get to relax and watch football, we're in the kitchen ensuring family traditions continue. See a few eye rolls, but continue anyway because this is important. I also want to remind everyone that the traditional Christmas narrative centers male perspectives. The wise men, the shepherds, even Santa, it's all about male figures. We should remember Mary's voice and the countless unnamed women who supported these stories. My youngest son, Kevin, 19, is already on his phone. My daughter, Ashley, 22, nods supportively though. Notice Thomas hasn't touched his food yet, just staring at me intensely. Thomas, honey, is everything all right? You seem distant today. He sets down his fork with a loud clink that makes everyone look up. Actually, Mom, I have an announcement to make. The whole table goes quiet. Thomas stands up slowly, his hands shaking slightly. I want everyone here to know that 3 days ago, I got a vasectomy. My fork drops from my hand, clattering onto the plate. Thomas, what are you talking about? That's a very personal medical decision. Trying to maintain composure, but my voice is getting higher. I'm not finished, Mom, he says, his voice getting louder. I got this procedure done specifically to end this toxic lineage forever. The entire room is dead silent now, except for the grandfather clock ticking. My heart starts racing because where is this going? Thomas's face is flushed red now, his voice cracking with emotion. I refuse to bring children into this world knowing they might turn out like you. I refuse to subject innocent kids to the kind of extreme feminist parenting you put me through. I feel like I've been slapped across the face. Thomas, please sit down, you're being dramatic, I managed to say. But he's not stopping, his voice getting more passionate. Dramatic? Dramatic? Do you know what it was like growing up as your son? Do you remember when I was 8 and you wouldn't let me play with toy soldiers because they promoted militaristic masculinity? My husband David shifts uncomfortably in his seat. I remember that incident, but I was trying to raise him with better values. Thomas, I was helping you develop emotional intelligence, and you were destroying my childhood, he shouts, cutting me off. Do you remember when I was 12 and wanted to join Little League? You made me quit because the coach was a man, and you said male authority figures would reinforce patriarchal power structures. I was the only kid in my grade who couldn't play sports because my mother thought it was politically problematic. Feeling defensive now because I had valid concerns about masculine aggression in sports. Thomas, I was protecting you from toxic masculine environments that you weren't protecting me from anything. You were isolating me. His voice is echoing through the dining room now. Thomas turns to address the whole table. When I was 14 and got my first girlfriend, Mom interrogated her about her views on feminism. She asked a 14-year-old girl whether she understood the importance of reproductive autonomy. The poor kid was so confused she stopped talking to me. My brother-in-law, Robert, clears his throat. Can see him trying not to say anything, but his face is getting red. Gianna, is that true? You really did that to a child? I was trying to ensure Thomas surrounded himself with people who shared progressive values. Thomas lets out a bitter laugh. Progressive values? You mean your values, imposed on everyone around you. Do you want to know what happened when I was 16 and tried to get a job at the hardware store? My stomach is sinking because I remember this fight. She called the manager and accused him of perpetuating gender stereotypes. She said hiring a teenage boy for manual labor was reinforcing harmful expectations about masculine roles. I lost the job before I even started because my own mother harassed my potential employer. My father-in-law, Marcus, who's been silent this whole time, finally speaks up. His voice is quiet but stern. Gianna, that boy needed to learn responsibility and work ethic. How could you sabotage his first job opportunity? Feeling attacked from all sides now. Marcus, I was teaching Thomas that his worth isn't defined by his ability to perform physical labor. I was showing him that he doesn't have to conform to limiting masculine stereotypes. But my voice sounds weak even to my own ears. Thomas is pacing now, his anger building. What about when I was 18 and got accepted to engineering school? You spent months trying to convince me not to go because STEM fields are male-dominated spaces that would corrupt my feminist values. You wanted me to study social work instead because it aligned better with your political agenda. Engineering has serious problems with gender equality, and I wanted you to be aware. I wanted to build bridges, Mom. I wanted to create things to solve problems. But you couldn't stand the idea that your son might choose a career that didn't revolve around your feminist ideology. My husband, David, finally speaks up, and I can hear disappointment in his voice. Gianna, I remember that conversation. You did try to talk him out of his dream. You said he should use his privilege to elevate women's voices instead of contributing to male dominance in engineering. Feeling betrayed that David is siding against me. These were important conversations about social responsibility. I was trying to help Thomas understand the impact of his choices on gender equity. But everyone at the table is staring at me with expressions ranging from disappointment to anger. Thomas stops pacing and looks directly at me. Do you want to know what the final straw was, Mom? Last month when I told you I was thinking about proposing to my girlfriend. My heart stops because I know where this is going. You spent 2 hours explaining why marriage is a patriarchal institution designed to oppress women. You told me that by proposing, I would be participating in the commodification of female sexuality. You said if I really loved her, I would reject the heteronormative expectation of marriage entirely. My daughter Ashley looks shocked. Mom, you really said that to him? I was helping him think critically about societal institutions that you were trying to control his personal relationships based on your political beliefs. Thomas's voice breaks as he continues. She's the most amazing woman I've ever met, and you tried to convince me not to marry her. Not because you thought she was wrong for me, but because marriage itself conflicted with your feminist theories. You would rather see your son alone than see him participate in an institution you disapprove of. My brother-in-law, James, who's been quiet all evening, finally loses it. Gianna, what the hell is wrong with you? This is your son we're talking about, not some political science experiment. How can you prioritize your ideology over his happiness? Feeling cornered and desperate now. James, you don't understand the complexities of feminist theory and how traditional institutions... I don't give a damn about your theories, he shouts. I care about my nephew, who's been systematically damaged by your extremist parenting. My youngest son, Kevin, puts his phone down and looks at me with disgust. Mom, I'm 21, and I've never brought a girlfriend home because I'm terrified of what you'll say to her. I've watched you humiliate Thomas for years, and I decided I'd rather be lonely than put someone through that. Feel like the room is spinning. These aren't extremist views. These are important progressive principles. Kevin, I've always encouraged open dialogue about relationship dynamics, and you've created an environment where your sons are afraid to live normal lives. My father-in-law Marcus stands up slowly. At 83, he commands respect when he speaks. Gianna, I've watched you raise these boys for over 20 years. I've held my tongue because I thought you'd eventually find balance. But Thomas getting a vasectomy to end the family lineage, that's on you. Feel tears starting but trying to hold them back. Marcus, I've raised my children to think critically about gender roles and social justice. These are important values that will make them better men. But my voice is cracking. Better men? Robert laughs bitterly. Your son just sterilized himself rather than risk having children who might be raised like he was. Your other son is afraid to date because of your political interference. How exactly does that make them better? Thomas sits back down, looking exhausted but determined. I want everyone to understand something very clearly. I didn't get this vasectomy impulsively or because I hate children. I made this decision because I cannot in good conscience risk passing Mom's parenting methods to another generation. The room is completely silent now. Even Ashley, who usually supports me, is staring at her plate. The thought of my hypothetical children being subjected to the same ideological manipulation I experienced, the idea that they might grow up believing their natural impulses and interests are politically problematic. I couldn't live with myself if I allowed that to happen. My husband David reaches across the table and puts his hand on Thomas's shoulder. Son, I owe you an apology. I should have intervened years ago when your mother's activism started affecting your daily life. I thought supporting her meant letting her parent however she wanted, feeling completely betrayed by my own husband now. David, how can you say that? We agreed to raise our children with progressive values. We talked about challenging traditional gender expectations and promoting social consciousness. Those weren't just my decisions, those were our family values. David shakes his head sadly. Promoting social consciousness, yes. Destroying our son's ability to function normally in society, no. There's a difference between teaching equality and forbidding every aspect of typical childhood. You crossed that line years ago, and I was too afraid of conflict to stop you. Marcus clears his throat again. Gianna, when Thomas was small, he used to visit us every weekend. He would beg us not to tell you about the games we played or the movies we watched. A 6-year-old child was already learning to hide normal activities from his own mother. Remember those visits, but thought Thomas was just processing different perspectives. I wanted Thomas to understand that he had choices beyond traditional masculine activities. I was expanding his worldview and teaching him that. You were teaching him that his natural inclinations were wrong, Marcus interrupts. Thomas looks around the table at all the men in his family. I want to thank all of you for trying to give me some normal experiences. Grandpa teaching me to use tools, Uncle Robert showing me how to change a tire, Uncle James taking me fishing even though he knew Mom would be angry, Dad letting me watch sports when she wasn't around, feeling sick realizing there was apparently a whole conspiracy to undermine my parenting. You all went behind my back? You deliberately contradicted the values I was trying to instill? We were trying to save that boy's sanity, James says firmly. And clearly we didn't do enough. Ashley finally speaks up, her voice quiet but disappointed. Mom, I always wondered why Thomas seemed so restricted growing up. I thought it was just because he was the oldest, but now I'm realizing. You really did treat him like a political project instead of a child. Kevin nods in agreement. I remember when Thomas wanted to play football in high school. You made him write a research paper about concussion rates and toxic masculinity instead. He never got to play a single sport because you always found some political objection. Thomas's girlfriend, Sarah, who's been silent all evening, finally speaks. Mrs. Gianna, Thomas told me about his childhood, but I thought he might be exaggerating. Hearing all this tonight, I understand why he's been so hesitant about marriage and family. He's genuinely afraid of repeating patterns he grew up with. Feel defensive about my reputation being attacked by this young woman. Sarah, I hope you understand that I was trying to raise Thomas to be more emotionally intelligent than typical men. I wanted him to be sensitive to issues of privilege and power dynamics. Those are valuable qualities in a partner. Sarah looks at me with a mixture of pity and frustration. Thomas is emotionally intelligent, but he's also terrified of making any decision you might disapprove of. He asked my permission before ordering a beer last week because he was worried about promoting alcohol culture. That's not emotional intelligence. That's anxiety disorder caused by over-controlling parenting. Robert pounds his fist on the table. Enough, Gianna. Look what you've done to this family. Your oldest son has mutilated himself rather than risk having children. Your youngest son is afraid to date. Your daughter is questioning everything she thought she knew about your parenting. Are you proud of these results? Feeling attacked and desperate to defend myself. Robert, I raised my children to think critically about societal expectations. I challenged them to question harmful traditions and develop progressive worldviews. These are important skills for navigating an unjust world. Thomas stands up again, his voice now calm but deadly serious. Mom, do you want to know what I learned from your progressive parenting? I learned that my mother's political beliefs mattered more to her than my happiness. I learned that normal childhood experiences were apparently dangerous and needed to be prevented. I learned that anything I naturally wanted to do was probably problematic and should be avoided. The truth of his words hits harder than his anger did. Thomas, that's not what I intended. I wanted you to have options beyond limiting stereotypes. You didn't give me options, Mom. You gave me restrictions. Every interest I developed, you found a political reason why it was harmful. Every friendship I made, you analyzed for problematic power dynamics. David is shaking his head in disappointment. Gianna, remember when Thomas was 10 and wanted to join Cub Scouts? You refused because the organization had militaristic overtones and promoted conformity. He cried for a week because all his friends were going camping and he couldn't participate. The Boy Scouts organization has legitimate issues with inclusivity and... He was 10 years old, David shouts. He wanted to make s'mores and learn knots, not join the military. But you couldn't separate a child's innocent desire for adventure from your political analysis. Marcus has heard enough. Gianna, I need to tell you something I should have said years ago. His voice carries the weight of decades of experience. I raised 4 sons during a time when men weren't supposed to show emotion. I made mistakes, certainly, but I never made my boys afraid to be themselves. Feel tears starting again because this feels so unfair. Marcus, I was trying to do better than previous generations. I wanted to raise sons who understood consent and equality and social justice. These are improvements over traditional masculine socialization. Understanding those things, yes, Marcus agrees, but not at the expense of basic human development. Thomas should have been allowed to play with other children without political commentary. He should have been allowed to develop interests without ideological interference. You treated normal childhood activities like they were dangerous propaganda. James looks around the table at his own teenage sons. Boys, I want you to understand something important about what happened to your cousin. Your Aunt Gianna thought she was protecting Thomas from harmful influences. But instead, she created an environment where he couldn't develop naturally. This is why we don't let political beliefs, even good ones, control every aspect of parenting. Feeling completely isolated now as even my nephews are being turned against me. James, I don't appreciate you using my family's private struggles to make political points. This isn't about politics, Aunt Gianna, one of his sons says quietly. This is about Cousin Thomas being so miserable he mutilated himself rather than have kids. Thomas pulls out his phone and shows a medical document. I want everyone to see this is real. This is my vasectomy consultation form, where I had to explain my reasoning to the doctor. I told him I was choosing sterilization to prevent psychological damage to potential offspring. The medical document makes everything feel horribly concrete and final. Thomas, this is permanent. You can't undo this decision. You might change your mind about having children someday. That's exactly the point, Mom. I will never change my mind, because I will never risk putting children through what you put me through. Sarah reaches over and takes Thomas's hand. We've talked about adoption if we ever want children. Thomas doesn't want biological children, but he might consider raising kids who already exist. Kids who wouldn't carry the genetic risk of inheriting his family's dysfunction. Feel like I've been punched in the stomach. Sarah, that's incredibly hurtful. We're not dysfunctional. We're politically conscious. Mrs. Gianna, your son sterilized himself to escape your influence. If that's not dysfunction, what is? Kevin suddenly speaks up with more emotion than I've heard from him in years. Mom, I need to tell you something too. I've been seeing a therapist since I started college. She says I have anxiety disorders related to feeling like I constantly disappoint authority figures. My heart breaks hearing that Kevin has been suffering. Kevin, honey, why didn't you tell me? I could have helped you work through. You're the reason I need therapy, he interrupts. I can't make any decision without second-guessing whether it aligns with your political expectations. David puts his head in his hands. Gianna, both our sons are in psychological distress because of your parenting methods. At what point do you admit that something went wrong? At what point do you take responsibility for the damage you've caused? Feeling desperate and cornered, need to make them understand that my intentions were good. David, everything I did was based on research about harmful, masculine socialization. I was trying to raise better men who wouldn't perpetuate systems of oppression. These are evidence-based parenting strategies designed to promote emotional health. Ashley, who has been my strongest supporter, finally turns against me. Mom, evidence-based parenting doesn't result in one son sterilizing himself and another needing therapy. Whatever research you were following, the results speak for themselves. Thomas and Kevin are both psychologically damaged. Robert stands up and starts pacing. Gianna, I've listened to your justifications for 20 years. Every time someone questioned your methods, you cited studies and theories. But theories don't matter when the real-world results are this catastrophic. Thomas looks exhausted, but determined to finish what he started. I want to read something to all of you. He pulls out a folded paper from his pocket. This is the letter I wrote to my doctor explaining why I wanted the vasectomy. My hands are shaking as I realize he's about to read deeply, personal thoughts aloud. Thomas, please don't do this publicly. We can discuss this as a family privately. No, Mom. Everyone needs to hear this because they've all watched it happen. They deserve to understand the full scope of what your parenting methods accomplished. He unfolds the paper and begins reading in a clear, steady voice. Dear Dr. Martinez, I am requesting a vasectomy for psychological rather than medical reasons. I was raised by a mother who prioritized political ideology over child development. As a result, I have deep-seated fears about perpetuating harmful parenting patterns. The room is completely silent except for Thomas's voice. My childhood was characterized by constant political analysis of normal activities. Play was evaluated for its social implications rather than its developmental value. Friendships were scrutinized for power dynamics rather than emotional connection. Interests were discouraged if they didn't align with feminist principles. Feel like I'm watching my life's work being dismantled piece by piece. Thomas, please stop. This isn't fair to read private medical documents. But nobody is supporting me anymore. Even Ashley is listening intently to her brother's words. Thomas continues reading. I am choosing sterilization because I cannot trust myself to parent normally. 24 years of ideological conditioning have left me unable to distinguish between healthy boundary setting and political control. I would rather eliminate the possibility of having children than risk damaging them the way I was damaged. Marcus wipes his eyes. At 83, he's seen a lot of family dysfunction. Thomas, I want you to know that your grandfather is proud of you for speaking your truth. It takes tremendous courage to break cycles of family dysfunction, even when the dysfunction comes from good intentions. Feeling attacked by my own father-in-law. Marcus, you're talking about dysfunction like, I abused these children. I never laid a hand on them, I never screamed at them, I provided everything they needed. I gave them opportunities for intellectual and emotional growth that most children never receive. David looks at me with deep sadness. Gianna, abuse isn't just physical violence. Emotional manipulation and psychological control can be just as damaging. You convinced our sons that their natural impulses were politically dangerous. How is that different from religious fundamentalists who convince children that normal desires are sinful? The comparison to religious extremism feels like a slap. David, how can you compare progressive parenting to religious fundamentalism? We were teaching our children to question harmful social structures, not to follow arbitrary rules. There's a huge difference between promoting social justice and promoting religious dogma. James laughs bitterly. Gianna, listen to yourself. You just described exactly what fundamentalists say about their beliefs. They think they're protecting their children from harmful secular influences. You thought you were protecting your children from harmful patriarchal influences. The mechanism is identical even if the content is different. Thomas folds up his letter and looks directly at me. Mom, I want you to understand something clearly. I don't hate you, and I don't think you're evil, but I will never forgive you for prioritizing your political beliefs over my psychological well-being. And I will never risk putting another child through what you put me through. Feel completely defeated and isolated. Every person at this table has turned against me. My own children, my husband, my extended family, all because I tried to raise progressive, socially conscious children. Sarah speaks up one final time. Mrs. Gianna, Thomas and I had long conversations about whether to tell you about the vasectomy. We decided you deserved to know because families should be honest with each other. But we also wanted you to understand the consequences of your parenting choices. Realize that this entire Christmas dinner was planned. Thomas didn't just spontaneously announce his vasectomy. This was a coordinated intervention designed to confront me publicly. You all planned this, didn't you? This whole confrontation was orchestrated. Thomas nods slowly. We talked about it as a family, yes. Everyone has been worried about you for years, but nobody wanted to create conflict. My vasectomy seemed like the right moment to finally have an honest conversation, because pretending everything is normal wasn't helping anyone. David reaches across the table toward me, but I pull my hand away. Gianna, we're not trying to humiliate you. We're trying to help you understand why your sons are struggling. We love you, but we can't keep enabling parenting methods that cause psychological damage. Look around the table at faces that used to show me respect and support. Now all I see is disappointment, anger, and pity. My feminist principles, my careful research, my dedication to raising progressive children, all of it dismissed as extremism and dysfunction. Ashley, my daughter, who I thought understood my values, delivers the final blow. Mom, I need to tell you that I've been afraid to have children too. Not because I got a vasectomy, obviously, but because I'm terrified of becoming like you. I don't trust myself not to repeat your parenting mistakes. Feel the last bit of support crumbling away. Even my daughter, who I raised to be strong and independent, even she has turned against everything I tried to teach her. Thomas stands up and puts on his coat. I think I've said everything I needed to say. Sarah and I are going to her parents' house for the rest of Christmas. Maybe next year we can have a normal family dinner without political lectures and ideological analysis. As Thomas and Sarah gather their things to leave, Kevin also stands up. I'm going with them. I can't pretend this is a normal Christmas anymore. Ashley hesitates but ultimately stays seated, though she won't make eye contact with me. I'll help clean up, but then I'm going home. I need time to process all of this. The male relatives start clearing the table in silence. My carefully planned Christmas dinner ending in complete disaster. My feminist victory meal becoming a humiliating defeat. Sit alone at the head of the table as everyone bustles around cleaning up. The irony isn't lost on me that the men are doing the traditionally feminine work of cleaning, while I sit powerless and isolated. David approaches me as the others finish in the kitchen. Gianna, I think you should consider therapy. Not because there's anything wrong with your values, but because you need help understanding boundaries. You can believe in feminism without making it your children's entire identity. Feel angry that even my husband thinks I need professional help. David, I don't need therapy. I need a family that supports my commitment to social justice. I need people who understand that raising politically conscious children requires sacrifice. Apparently this family isn't capable of that level of progressive thinking. David shakes his head sadly. Gianna, Thomas sterilized himself rather than risk repeating your parenting. If that doesn't make you question your methods, nothing will. I'm going to sleep in the guest room tonight. I need space to think about whether I can continue enabling this kind of extremism. As David walks away, I'm left completely alone. The house that I decorated so carefully for a perfect progressive Christmas now feels like a monument to my failure as a mother. Clean up the remaining dishes in silence. Thinking about Thomas's vasectomy document, thinking about Kevin's therapy, thinking about Ashley's fear of becoming like me. Realized that despite all my feminist theory and progressive parenting research, despite all my efforts to raise better men who understand social justice, I have somehow raised children who are terrified of perpetuating my influence. The house is quiet now, except for the grandfather clock that witnessed Thomas's announcement. My family gone, my marriage strained, my children psychologically damaged, all because I tried to do better than previous generations. Sit at the empty dining table surrounded by evidence of my carefully planned feminist Christmas. The ethically sourced decorations, the women-owned business napkins, the progressive meal planning, all of it meaningless in the face of my fundamental failure as a mother. Thomas got a vasectomy to end this toxic lineage forever, and as I sit here alone in my perfectly progressive house, I'm starting to wonder if maybe he made the right choice.